Hi, this is Mike Mattesi, and welcome back to the second video installment of Force. I have here the drawing I left off with from the prior week. We talked about directional force. Let me back up just to recap. We talked about force as an idea, and that the idea is in the line, and how important that line actually is. And from there, we ended up going to directional force, and then from directional force, we talked about its beginning, middle, and end, or coming from the event and going to. And we talked about applied force pushing itself against that directional force. So if you got through that with me, then that's great, because it's only going to get better from here. I know, like I said, it sounds all a little bit like physics, but it is. You know, we're dealing with the sort of humanity, the romantic side behind physics. So I thought we would take a look at this drawing really quick. I wanted to show you down here in the bottom of this drawing that you can see here's my like thumbnail, right? My concept for this bigger drawing. You know, like this drawing, and this is only a few seconds, obviously, but this drawing was all about the vitality and, you know, power, the force, the energy that this model had sweeping down, you know, to this elbow right here, right? It's all this like boom, you know. So, you know, when I'm drawing that, I'm drawing thinking the way I'm talking to you right now, which is like boom, that's pushing in there, and this is sweeping here, and this is going there. So, you know, and here it's in his face also. It's like all this power sweeping down there, it's sweeping into his face, you know, and that's exciting to me. And that's what makes me want to draw. So, all right. So let's talk about our next step. We've discussed directional force and applied force. All right. Again, as a quick note, you know, I'm drawing on Strathmore Smooth newsprint. Smooth is essential. I'm looking for a fluid relationship between the drawing tool and the paper, and I'm drawing with like a wax sort of crayon at the moment because it is very smooth. And I'm also using this layout bond, Strathmore layout bond, for any of the tracings that you're seeing me do. All right, so we talked about directional and applied force. Now we have this directional and applied force, but so what? You know, like what does it mean? Well, the first thing is, you know, when you start to now go and draw, try using them. You know, it's like, all right, I see my, you know, my friend is sitting in a chair, and oh, you know, wait a minute, instead of me just like copying all the angles of my friend, like, you know, sitting in a chair, right, like I'm doing this kind of thing. It's like, oh, there's his body and his head, and there's his leg, and here's the other leg, right? And this is what I'll typically see, right? People sort of measure distances and angles. You might look at your friend sitting in the chair and think, wow, look at like the force in his back. You know, it's like it's really, I really feel the weight of his body pushing into the sofa, for instance. Let's say there's, you know, maybe there's a chair here or something, right? It's like this. You know, it's like I really feel his back pushing in. That's what you're looking for. You know, you want to get a sense of how energy is actually moving around. So the next step is merging directional and applied forces. So, you know, here we go, right? I've got this directional force. Notice how I'm drawing it again, right? And what happens is that first directional force applies itself to the next directional force, right? So we're taking these two ideas that we discussed in the first video and really gluing them together. So we've got directional force, and it applies itself to the next directional force. And this directional force applies itself to the next directional force. And then so on, and so on, and so on. All right? So, you know, what happens, right? Like, where does this lead us? All right. Let me grab this. So it leads us to this. Right? I can't fit the whole drawing in here, so I'm going to kind of pan it for you. But you can see there's all this fluidity in this figure. Okay? And the term to learn here, the term to learn is rhythm. You know, rhythm's taught in a lot of books. It's not like I made up rhythm. But I think what I'm am trying to do is instruct it or clarify it or teach it in a new way. And again, it's to see that these forces, right, directional applies, directional applies, directional applies, and and so on until you have this sort of serpentine-like movement. Now that's just force itself. You also have mass, and we're just we'll discuss mass a little bit more in the third video, but right now, just understand that you're trying to get from one place to another, right? And if you get a force, the first one correct, right? Let's say you draw a force, and you get it right. Remember what we did in the first video about like coming from and going to, okay? What happens in the coming from and going to is in this first mark, right? In this first force line, this directional force, the going to, where do I go? Where do I go? Where do I go? You're looking at let's say you're looking at a model, it's like, where do I go? If you got that directional force correct, it's going to point you, literally point you like an arrow, right? It's going to point you to the next directional force because it needs to apply itself to that force. So you're going to go from one to the next. It's almost like, it's like highlight. Or let's take something a little more, something that most people understand. It's like driving a car, right? So when you drive a car and you're on the road and you were to serpentine like this, right? You're let's say you're coming in straight, right? You're coming in straight like this really fast, and you turn the wheel. The car really wants to go straight, right? It wants to keep going this way, but you're forcing it to turn on this trajectory, and then you let off the wheel, right? And then you start turning over here. It's like it's going to obviously point here. It wants to go straight until you turn it again. And another great example for this is like skiing. For those of you that have skied, it's an excellent example because you're going downhill, right? It's like you're going down the paper. And if you pop your skis from one side, where are they going to pop? You're not, to stop the momentum from going this direction, you obviously have to jump to this side, and then you're going to push your skis into the snow, and then you're going to pop and push your skis into the snow, and so on and so on. So it's a very natural sort of physical relationship we have with our world that now you are bringing into drawing, right? So, going back to this drawing, you can see that there's a lot of rhythm in it, right? Here, I'm gonna sketch it out here for you. So, and it's all over this figure, but just to give you some examples, here's one, right? Well, here's many. We have this in the fingers to the hand, from the hand, into the forearm. Now the forearm still continues, right? This is still really one arc. The reason it's one force, it's one directional force, is because it didn't change direction yet. I didn't flip over, right? My skis didn't jump to the other side. Here they did. So this is one directional force. Here's another directional force. Here's the third directional force, right? And the third one's really long, right? Number one's pretty small, two is a little larger, three is really long. And as I follow it, right, like I said, it's going to point, right, to where I need to go. It's like, oh, well, this could lead me a couple of places. It could lead me up into the arm, right, and then I'm going to go down this one. It's going to lead me into the head. In the head, with the head, it almost continues. So it has, like I said, different places, different places to go. Now, it hooks up perfectly. All this stuff hooks up into the back in this case. So, and the back always goes in three places. Back goes to the neck and to the face. So this force, right, this directional force goes from here to here. So there's like 1 and 2. And then it goes in 2 other locations. And this is how this guy basically hooks up. It also goes into the arm, this arm, and it's going to split up and go into this arm. So it divides, right? It sort of drives up the upper back and then divides into the neck and head, and then it shoots off to the shoulder, to both shoulders. You can also see here that here's the main 2 forces. And just to talk about, where to start, which is always a big question for people. Where do I start? I always teach hierarchy. So what does that mean? That means drawing from big to small, right? Thinking, right? It's about ideas, so thinking from big to small. The biggest thing you can do here in two directional forces is deal with the rib cage and with the hips, okay? So you've got the upper body, right? All of this. And you can draw it like this, literally, you know, this is not about neatness. This is about vitality, you know? So it's like, okay, here's the back, right? And where's the back going? Oh, it's going into that hip, right? So that's two directional forces, right? Here's number one. Directional force of the upper body applied itself, right? I'm going to draw this arrow here. It applied itself to the next directional force, number two. Right there, right? That's the first rhythm. So just to go back to rhythm a little, rhythm finally is when you have two directional forces. Two, I should say, linked, right? I was going to say opposing, but they're not really opposing. They're linked. Two linked directional forces, so from one to the next, and their link equals rhythm. All right, so I hope that makes sense. You know, and that's what you're looking for. That's what's happening in these drawings. Here, I'm going to grab another. Here's another drawing as an example. Okay. All right, so again, focusing on rhythm. Here, I'm gonna redraw this one smaller for you and see what my process would be. Okay. Let's see. All right. So basically, you know, it's like here's the back. Notice what I'm doing, right? I'm like revving up. It's like let me get the energy of the back, right? Okay, so there's the energy of the back, right? And it's going to, that's one directional force. Where does it go? Oh, it goes down that arm, okay? And then it comes this way, all right? You see this? I'm going around sort of the butt area, and now I'm going to sweep my way up into the thigh, right? So it goes like this. It goes around along the bottom of the thigh and then up into the knee, okay? And then it's going to sweep down the calf. And then it goes sort of up into the ankle and then down into the foot and then the ball of the foot, right? That's a really cool little moment. The ball of the foot's like pressing out. He had his toes sort of crunched under his foot, right? This is how it starts. You know, this is how I teach everyone how to, you know, begin their relationship with force. Basically, you end up with drawings that look like this, meaning, you know, it's not about structure, it's not about anatomy. It's not about shape and design. It's mostly about feeling directional force move its way from one place in the figure to the next. That's the goal. You know, and stay loose and comfortable with yourself during that process. You know, like I'm going to close this video with an exercise that I do with students. I call it skating the page, basically. You should try this at home. It won't hurt you. I don't have to put any kind of, you know, legal writings up there. What you do is you close your eyes, and the process I take students through is you close your eyes and make believe that you're on a frozen lake by yourself, surrounded by evergreen trees at night. And it's super quiet, and you have ice skates on. And what you want to do is, while your eyes are closed, you want to skate the page, okay? And in skating the page, you have this routine that you're kind of going through. And in that routine, the way that you draw should mimic your speed and the cutting of the blades into the ice, basically, right? And it's such a great warm-up to force drawing. And so now we're done. And if we analyze this, the reason it's such a great exercise is, you know, you can see that I'm dealing with all these directional forces, right? And rhythms, you know, like here's one. It's like here's this directional force. I push into it, right? Because I came in with a certain amount of speed. I pushed through that curve, and then I came up out of it, right? So it's a great exercise of I don't know, trying to instill yourself with some sense of rhythm, some sense of grace, because that's what you're looking for. You know, this comes from this. You know, comes from me having a sensibility for skating the page. You know, for understanding fluidity and grace in the human figure and in things that are alive, you know, and it brings me to this, and it brings me to the drawings that I've been showing you. So, okay, I'm going to end the video there, and I'll see you guys in video 3. Thanks again.